Welcome to Pop-O-Holics, the show about hot takes hotter than pancakes, where every week we deliver the most recent in film and pop culture news to your eyeballs. This week, you're listening to the weekly upload for September 26, 2022, and I am your host, substitute host, Chris Conkling. As always, I'm joined by one of my best friends,
Brian Dupree. How's it going, man?
It's going well. You know, I haven't had a lot to talk about the last couple weeks. I've been really busy at work managing a couple different projects. But you, sir, told me that you've been having some fun. You recently went to Busch Gardens. Is that right?
Oh my gosh. Shout out, friend of the pod, Chip. He came on for our Silence of the Lambs episode.
Great episode.
Recently posted to YouTube within the last couple months. Definitely go and check that out or check it out on the podcast feed.
Check it out on the podcast feed because I'm pretty sure it's been unlisted on our YouTube channel. So definitely go to the podcast feed.
Go to the podcast feed. Check that out. He was able to get me a free ticket, and I finally was able to ride Iron Gwazi, which is the latest, newest roller coaster. At Busch Gardens, there was previously a coaster called Just Gwazi that was a 2-track coaster that ran simultaneously. Towards the end of its run, they didn't run in tandem anymore. It didn't run like it used to, and was just not necessarily a worse ride, but just a different ride, and they weren't handling it the same way. This company came in, totally revamped it, kept a lot of the wood, but they combined it with steel now. So it's combined wooden and steel roller coaster. So it's got the wooden feel to some degree, but you can go upside down because the structural integrity is there.
This ride dangerous.
Is insane. There's so much negative G-forces that you're getting. If you like that sort of ride, it's near constant. It's very quick, but it does not stop. And it immediately became one of my favorite coasters. So Busch Gardens, it has 4 or 5 insanely good coasters. This is just the latest one. So yeah, I had a great time with that. And if you haven't been, come to Tampa, check it out.
Brian, was Robert Downey Jr. at the opening of this ride, considering that it's now Iron?
My goodness.
Oh boy.
Spoilers for the MCU, but he couldn't make it this time.
Where's the slide whistle that we so
we need the
need?
harmonica. My goodness.
I'm sorry. Don't leave, loyal listeners and viewers. I promise we're going to get into some good stuff. Typically on the weekly upload, toward the center of the show, we'll talk about quick hits, what Brian and I and our usual host, Christian Katie, have been consuming in the world of media. However, considering that our usual host, Christian Katie, is on a bit of a hiatus right now, Brian and I have been taking the time to watch one single thing between the two of us every week and then talk about it a little more in depth. Tonight, or today, depending on when you're watching this, we're going to be going over the first 3 episodes of Disney Plus's new Star Wars show, Andor. And
Andor booster pack that we've gotten here.
Andor, it is a booster pack, and I'm going to, when we get into our conversation, I'm going to talk about that a little bit and why I think that is, and how I think they should handle the show going forward. But they're not going to listen to me anyway. Let's not give away any of our thoughts so early. We're going to get into it, and because we have so much to talk about later on the show, we're going to jump right in. The roadmap for the show is first we're going to talk about our community section, do a little housekeeping as we usually do at the top of the show. Then we're going to jump right into Brian's Wacky News Corner, deliver that up-to-date film and pop culture news as I referenced earlier. And then, of course, we'll dive into our Andor review. So, without going any further, jumping into the community section, we have a Throwback Thursday episode coming out this week. We're going to highlight it on our social media channels. You can follow us on Twitter at Pop-O-Holics, on Instagram at Pop-O-Holicscast. We're also on Facebook for all the old heads out there still using Facebook, of which I am one. But we're going to be highlighting our conversation of Hot Rod, the movie Hot Rod from 2020. We've been highlighting our slapstick comedy month over the last couple weeks. Last week, we re-released our Tommy Boy episode with Christian's brothers, Bobby and Ryan. That was a really fun conversation, despite the technical difficulties we had with the mic. And then, as I mentioned this week, we're going to be talking about Hot Rod. Brian, do you remember anything specific about our Hot Rod episode?
I don't remember anything specifically really, but
Great podcasting.
this is one of my, this is an all-time favorite comedy for at least myself, and I know Christian. We grew up on this movie and it was kind of a cult classic between us. But yeah, I think in terms of slapstick, it is continuing the genre well, and if you're in for that kind of comedy, it's hard to beat it.
I agree. I'm not going to make any declarative statements because I don't remember exactly what my opinion was during that Hot Rod episode. I have had an up and
Hot
down
takes.
relationship with Hot Rod over the course of the last couple of decades. But
The
go
streams
check out
are
the episode.
split because he had sex the night before and he couldn't decide about how he felt about Hot Rod. Deep cut, Hot Rod jokes here. Everybody loves it.
And you know what? Those deep cut jokes are what you're going to get on Thursday when you go back and listen to that Hot Rod conversation from 2020.
Do you even know what I'm talking about?
Not at all. Do you want to
Nope. We're going to leave it there.
do the research, folks. Other than our Throwback Thursday episode, we also have another giveaway this month. All month, we have had a contest to get a 4K digital copy of Spider-Man No Way Home. All you have to do to be entered into this giveaway is subscribe to our YouTube channel and comment on any of the 4 weekly uploads that we've posted this month in September. This is going to be the final weekly upload for September. You have 4 different opportunities to enter the contest. You can literally comment one comment on every single weekly upload for 4 entries just to raise your chances of winning that super awesome 4K digital copy of Spider-Man No Way Home, one of the highest grossing films of 2021. All right, Brian, that being said, I think it's time to get a little bit wacky and dive right in to Brian's Wacky News Corner.
Start on wacky. Welcome back, everyone. The wackiest of all news corners, as usual, and the first time that we're coming into this segment. We're in the land of reboots and IP, sequels, requels, everything. Sometimes it turns into something that I can be excited about, and this is one of those cases. The original cast of the Beverly Hills Cop movies are coming back for a Netflix, the latest Netflix Beverly Hills Cop movie called Beverly Hills Cop Axel Foley. We're not going to get into the naming and how silly everything
Brian,
is right now.
this going to be the Top Gun Maverick of the Beverly Hills Cop franchise?
Honestly,
based on
I
the
can't
naming
say that
scheme.
it didn't. Yeah, they probably played into that. It's like, 5th biggest movie of all time. Let's lean in. We'll just throw the name up there just so people remember who the main character of these movies is.
Might
but
as well.
With that being said, obviously Eddie Murphy coming back to play the titular Axel Foley, but we also have other characters played by Judge Reinhold, John Ashton, Paul Reiser, and Bronson Pinchot returning as well. So we have Judge Reinhold and John Ashton playing Detective Billy Rosewood and Sergeant Taggart, the sidekick cops to Eddie Murphy's character. These are movies that I grew up watching. My dad, because of his age, is very much a fan of 80s movies and kind of raised me watching these sorts of movies. So fairly certain I've seen all 3 of the original movies, and I'm not sure the quality of the sequels. I've come back to the first one, and I think it holds up to a large degree, and I think it's still a very funny movie. I've heard the sequels are hit or miss. I think 3 is largely considered to be pretty bad, and 2 is better. But with that being said, definitely movies that I can see myself coming back to prior to these characters coming back to the small screen on Netflix here. Did you watch Beverly Hills Cop or the movies growing up? Are you a fan of Eddie Murphy movies generally? How do you feel about Axel Foley?
So I'm a fan of Eddie Murphy movies generally, as you put it. Beverly Hills Cop is like a beloved 80s
Huge
movie.
Norbit guy.
Favorite movie of all time. It made my top 10 favorites list when we did that episode a couple years ago.
Obviously.
Beverly Hills Cop is one of those beloved 80s movies. What worries me about this sequel, a couple of decades after the original has come out, is Coming to America didn't do very well last year on Amazon. And there was a steep drop in quality in regards to that movie compared to the original. That's always kind of my hesitation going into these sequels to comedies that came out, 20 years prior to these movies being made. So before this movie comes out, I'm definitely going to watch Beverly Hills Cop in its entirety. I've seen a lot of the staple scenes from that movie, but I definitely need to give it a revisit and full watch before this thing comes out.
It's got the all-timer theme music.
Yes, it does.
That I'm not going to try and replicate because it would be embarrassing, but if you know it, you definitely know it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I share that skepticism as well. The fact that everyone's back on board,
that's very exciting.
Is a good is
rare.
at least a relatively good sign. Hopefully they've got a strong script to back it up here to justify this. But yeah, Eddie Murphy being back, definitely a good thing in general here. So yeah, moving on to the next piece of news proper. All right, so a little bit of quick hits for me. X, the movie written and directed by Ty West that came out earlier this year. It's competing for a spot in my top 10 right now. I loved that movie. It was really solid. It was announced nearly immediately afterwards that there was a prequel movie called Pearl that gives us the backstory for one of our characters in that movie. So that's out now. Right when this dropped, before I was able to see it, I did get to see Pearl over the weekend as well. It was announced that a third movie was in the middle of production. They had shot Pearl back to back, and Pearl was already done by the time X came out. This one is nearly done and planned to come out early 2023. So Ty West has basically gotten $1 million for each of these movies. I think he's one of the major producers, as well as Mia Goth as well. The first one was $1 million budget, made almost $15 million. I think it was like 14.7 million. Certified good ROI.
I was just going to say, certified good ROI. That's a bit of a shout out to Christian.
That's for Christian. Pearl just came out, has already, on a $1 million budget, has already made about 4.5 million. So already made plenty of money. And I'm just excited that these sorts of things are happening. I think it was last year that the Fear Street trilogy, and I can't remember the director's name, but she came out and had this pretty amazing idea to do 3 movies back to back. They originally were going to be in theaters, but Netflix bumped it down. But I love studios getting behind horror directors and giving them this kind of pseudo-artistic freedom to do these kind of big stories that are relatively small budget. But with someone like Ty West, it can really work. So long story short, these movies are really great. And if you haven't seen them, you definitely should check them out. But the third one, MaXXXine, was announced, and there's a teaser trailer for it at the end of Pearl. And this follows one of our characters from X. It's a sequel to X, where Pearl is the prequel. And I am so ridiculously excited for this movie. I think I liked X a little bit more than Pearl, but they're very different movies, and Pearl is very effective in its own way. I think it's just maybe less fun. For better and for worse. It's got an insane monologue that people are justifiably raving about online by Mia Goth's character. That's unbelievable. I'm saying very little about these movies because a lot of this is tied up in spoilers for the movies themselves.
We appreciate it.
But Ty West, someone that I wasn't really familiar with before having seen these movies, and he's quickly becoming kind of a must-see director for me. I know you haven't seen these, Chris, so you probably don't have too much to say about these, but do you have any interest in eventually seeing X and Pearl and MaXXXine potentially?
All the films are getting, great praise, like you just mentioned. And I think it's so cool that Ty West is getting to release this horror trilogy in such close succession to each film. That it's pretty astonishing how quickly he's making these things.
The word of mouth for X is pretty much still there, and then Pearl's right around around the corner.
Yeah, and they showed the teaser for MaXXXine. This it was initially shown at TIFF, wasn't it? At the
That's
end
right.
of the showing of Pearl.
Toronto International Film Festival, right.
So I'm just really happy for Ty West. You know, any creator getting projects made, especially in such quick succession, is a positive thing. You're the horror buff here on the Pop-O-Holics. You speak very highly of these films. These will be movies that I should eventually check out, especially considering such high praise. So yeah, I'll put them on my list, and maybe we'll see.
It's going around.
I'll probably get to it before I see a promising young woman.
Yeah, definitely. So. Definitely will. Yeah. Martin Scorsese raving about Pearl.
What more can you ask for?
A lot of people were talking about that. So yeah, definitely check those out. So that's MaXXXine. The teaser was dropped for that at TIFF, and it's now playing online and at the end of Pearl as well. So that's it for the news proper this week. We're going to move into some stuff that's coming out to watch this week. Starting out in TV, we have Reasonable Doubt that's coming to Hulu this Wednesday, the 28th. So this is a new scripted drama from the Onyx Collective and stars Emayatsi Cornialdi and is executive produced by Kerry Washington, who also directs the first episode, as well as comedian Larry Wilmore. So Cornialdi plays Jack Stewart, a high-powered criminal defense attorney who navigates her personal and professional life while maintaining questionable ethics and wild interpretations of the law. According to the official synopsis, she's described as, quote, the most brilliant and fearless defense attorney in LA who bucks the justice system at every chance she gets. This is created, written, and executive produced by showrunner Ramla Mohammed, who also worked on Scandal and Little Fires Everywhere. It's loosely based on a real celebrity lawyer named Sean Hawley, who advised people such as Tupac Shakur, Cat Williams, the Kardashian and Jenner families, Lindsay Lohan, and more. And also stars McKinley Freeman, Michael Ealy, Thaddeus J. Mixon, and many more. This is the first scripted drama from the Onyx Collective, from this group, and takes its name from Jay-Z's first album, Reasonable Doubt. It also features a score of contemporary and classic hip-hop, R&B, and neo-soul music composed by Adrian Young, who's a composer who's been around for a while, did things such as Black Dynamite, and Ali Shaheed Muhammad of A Tribe Called Quest notoriety. So a lot of reasons to potentially check this show out. That's Reasonable Doubt. That will be, and it actually might be coming out Tuesday, the 27th. I apologize about that, on Hulu. So moving on, we have Entergalactic coming to Netflix, and that'll be out this Friday. We mentioned this show a decent bit when it was first announced. Big fan of Kid Cudi as an artist, and he's been moving into acting more and more throughout the course of the last 5 to 10 years. This is based on his upcoming album that is dropping on the same day, this Friday, the 30th, and the soundtrack will also be the album itself to a certain degree. It was originally going to be a TV series, but is now announced as a special, and I'm not entirely certain about the length of it, but I guess it's going to be kind of a one-shot, which I'm hoping is not a sign of the quality and maybe can tighten up some things that maybe would have been a little loose in the show. We have a cast that it seems like makes sense. There would have been plans for more with all the people here, but we have Scott Mescudi, Kid Cudi himself, Jessica Williams, Timothy Chalamet, Ty Dolla $ign, Laura Harrier, Vanessa Hudgens, Christopher Abbott, Teyana Taylor, Jaden Smith, Macaulay Culkin, many more. The music is by Dot Genius and Plain Pat, people who have been working with Cudi since very early on in his career in terms of production, had kind of a falling out at some point in his career, but are working together again. I think with Plain Pat more so than Dot Genius, maybe, and I may be confusing him with someone else. But the animation style of this show seems worth watching for itself, aside from just the creative team behind this. But the plot of this, Jabari is a charming streetwear-clad artist on the cusp of real success. After a chance run-in with his cool new photographer neighbor, Meadow, Jabari has to figure out whether he can make space for love in his life. So kind of a classic story here. Gonna have Cudi music to ride along with it, and interesting animation with a stellar cast. I'm hoping that this is solid. What are you thinking about for Entergalactic?
I can't wait to see this, Brian. Just like you, I'm a big fan of Kid Cudi. I have been since college. The look of this special is so cool. It's very like Scanner Darkly, not really
like kind of rotoscopy.
Yeah, rotoscopy animation, like Scanner Darkly, Waking Life. Even more leaning toward kind of like Into the Spider-Verse in regards to like the specific style. But I think it has a lot of fantastic elements. The cast, as you mentioned, is great. So yeah, this is definitely something I'm going to be checking out, and I can't wait for that album to drop on the same day. That it's just really exciting.
Yeah, so that's Entergalactic, both the album and the special that'll be on Netflix and on music streaming services this Friday, the 30th. Moving into some movies that are coming out this week. Blonde is also coming to Netflix on the 28th, this Wednesday. So this is written and directed by Andrew Dominic and based on the 2000 novel of the same name by Joyce Carol Oates. It is a fictional take on the life of Marilyn Monroe, who's played by Ana de Armas. This movie also stars Adrian Brody, Bobby Cannavale, Xavier Samuel, and Julianne Nicholson. And the synopsis is, after a traumatic childhood, Norma Jean Mortensen becomes an actress in the Hollywood of the 1950s and early 60s. She becomes world famous under the stage name Marilyn Monroe, but her on-screen appearances are in stark contrast to the issues she faces in her private life. This movie has been talked about a decent deal as the embargoes and things have been lifted, and it's been getting some screenings at places. Kind of a bit notorious for being an NC-17 rating that's coming to Netflix. So I'm not sure how many places it actually can screen these days anymore with that rating. From the director, it sounds like the movie got this rating because of who the characters are rather than necessarily the content of what they're doing. I mean, it remains to be seen how far this goes in terms of...
I heard there's some pretty dark elements in this film. Okay.
And, there are people who question the presentation of her as well. So definitely dig into all of that online. I'm interested to see this movie from the people who are working on it. Ana de Armas, a very interesting casting choice that people... I don't think I would have necessarily seen her in it, but from the trailers,
She looks great.
It looks like incredible casting. So I'm definitely going to check this one out. It's got like exactly a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. So I feel like it could be a movie that I love or that I hate. But I think I could tend on the side of really liking this one. I like that sometimes critics being conflicted about something can be a good thing. It's like at least people are reacting to it.
It means it's thought-provoking, interesting,
Yes.
Polarizing. Potentially.
And on that note, this movie is largely in black and white with some color in it as well. So it's going out of its way to be a little bit like in your face and maybe polarizing. But yeah, that's Blonde. That'll be on Netflix this Wednesday. Something else that's coming out this week, Smile, is coming to theaters this Friday. This is the latest horror film in a directorial debut from writer-director Parker Finn based on his short film called Laura Hasn't Slept from 2020. It stars Sosie Bacon, Jesse T. Usher, Kyle Gallner, Caitlin Stasey, Cal Penn, and Rob Morgan. And the premise is, after witnessing a bizarre traumatic incident involving a patient, Dr. Rose Cotter starts experiencing frightening occurrences that she can't explain. I'm just going to stop it there because as with these sorts of movies, I only watched like half of this trailer and kind of tune out afterwards because horror movies tend to kind of walk you through more than I appreciate. And there are notable exceptions, but this is something that I immediately thought conceptually, I'm totally in for this movie. It looks creepy. I like what they're doing visually. I'll be checking this one out and talking about it at some point as the horror guy on the podcast. That's Smile. That'll be in theaters this Friday.
You're the Pop-O-Holics Horror Sherpa, Brian.
The Horror Sherpa, yes.
It's going to be your new nickname. From
taking
fact
you
guy
up the mountain
to
of
Horror
terror.
Sherpa, up the mountain of terror. I love it.
Something else that's coming to theaters this Friday is Bros. So this is directed by Nicholas Stoller from a screenplay that he co-wrote with Billy Eichner, who also stars and executive produces in this. It also stars Bowen Yang, Harvey Fierstein, Luke McFarlane, Monica Raymond, and many more. Nicholas Stoller, the director, is known for things such as Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Get Into the Greek, the Neighbors movies, and I guess being involved in some capacity writing and production in some of the Muppets movies as well. The premise for this, Bobby Lieber, an out and proud but also scared and self-doubting New York Museum curator, is hired to write a romantic comedy about a gay couple. Along the way, he meets and eventually potentially falls in love with Aaron, a macho lawyer. We've talked about it a good deal in the past few weeks. I love a good meta comedy. We talked about Clerks 3 recently, which got us very much in our nostalgic / meta / existential angst feels.
I'm still
Bros,
Brian.
Yes, Bros looks funny, looks like it could give some solid feels, and yeah, is going to be coming out this Friday. So that's in theaters. Bros. The last movie we're talking about this week is The Greatest Beer Run Ever. So this is coming out in theaters and on Apple TV Plus day and date. In 1967, we follow John Chicky Donahue, who leaves New York to track down his army buddies in Vietnam and share a few beers with them. This movie looks completely insane and ridiculous. It's directed and co-written by Peter Farrelly of the Farrelly Brothers fame, but also more recently of Green Book notoriety. It's based on the book of the same name by Joanna Malloy and John Chicky Donahue himself, and stars Zac Efron as the main character, as well as Russell Crowe and Bill Murray. I don't know how much to say about this. You have Zac Efron half drunk at a bar saying, I'm going to go bring some beers to Vietnam.
According to the trailer, based on a true story.
Based on a true story. And God damn it, he goes and he tries to bring some beers to Vietnam. And he discovers there's a war over there, Chris.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that.
I don't know if you knew this, but it's as the trailer
time
states, it's easier to get into the war than to get out of the war, Brian.
And
especially when you're
true.
just a bro trying to bring your soldier bros some Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Yes. So Peter Farrelly seems to be taking the Adam McKay route with this movie, kind of like a potentially silly take on a real life event that is kind of stranger than fiction to some degree. And it's going to be available on Apple, so relatively available as well as in theaters.
Yeah.
So could be good, depending on your feelings on Green Book, which I'm sure many people have many feelings on Green Book. But yeah, that will be out this Friday. That's The Greatest Beer Run Ever. And everyone, that wraps it up for the news.
Brian, once again, every week, consistently delivering the wackiest news
so wacky
on any platform
in
existence.
I've got a few beers. You got any war zones that I can head towards? Because I think
time to go on
I'm
the
feeling
second greatest
fresh.
beer run, Brian. Let's do it. Goodbye, loyal listeners and viewers. Brian and I are out. Brian, thank you so much for delivering the news and letting our loyal listeners and viewers know what's coming out this week. We got a lot to talk about with Andor, so Brian and I are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to start that conversation.
To steal from the Empire? To just walk in like you belong? They're so proud of themselves. So fat and satisfied. They can't imagine that someone like me would ever get inside their house.
Cassian Andor. The Empire is choking us so slowly. We're starting not to notice. what I'm asking is this. Wouldn't you rather give it all to something real?
That was from the trailer of Disney Plus's new Star Wars show, Andor. IMDb, according to IMDb, it is a prequel series to Star Wars Rogue One. In an era filled with danger, deception, and intrigue, Cassian will embark on the path that is destined to turn him into a rebel hero. As all of us know who've seen Rogue One, that is his fate. This show is created by Tony Gilroy of the Bourne films. He wrote every single one of those films. He directed Bourne Legacy. These first 3 episodes are directed by Tony Haynes of Doctor Who and Sherlock and Black Mirror fame. He's directed many episodes there. He's actually directed one of my favorite Christmas Doctor Who specials, the Christmas Carol. Gets me every time I watch it. It's written by Tony Gilroy as well, the entire series. The cinematography is by Adriano Goldman and Jonathan Freeman. We don't currently know the official budget of the entire show. I was doing some digging, and it looks like it's pretty in line with what the rest of the Disney Plus shows have cost, roughly around $150 million for the entire production. And it stars Diego Luna, Kyle Soller, Adria Arjona, James McArdle, Stellan Skarsgård, Fiona Shaw, and of course, many more. It's a huge cast. It's a big Star Wars production. In this segment, Brian and I are going to give our non-spoiler reviews of the first 3 episodes of Andor that dropped recently on Disney+. Then we're going to go into a more spoiler conversation where we talk about some moments or elements that stood out to us. We're going to talk about what our hopes are for the rest of the series going forward in the 12-episode season, and then we'll give our final thoughts. With that, Brian, what did you think of the first 3 episodes of Andor?
Well, Chris, I'm pretty excited about this one. I got to be honest. I was a pretty big fan. Yeah, I like this. I think I'm going to be a little sweeter on it than you are, unfortunately. But I think the episodes, I liked that they dropped 3 at once. I think the episodes feel paced well. I did watch them pretty much back to back, so I'm interested to see how it plays week to week. But these 3, we knew that they're going to be kind of 3-episode arcs, and this very much fulfilled that promise. I think there's very much a through line here. We get some flashbacks that are kind of thematically in tandem with what's happening in what's the modern day in the majority of the show that I think is working really well. And then we'll get into in some of my favorite moments. You mentioned the budget here. This looks as good or better than any of the other Star Wars stuff that we've seen on Disney Plus for sure. I think definitely some really great effects, and looks like a lot of practical stuff happening here too that I really appreciate.
To that point, as we know, most of the shows have ended up using the volume to do all their production. This is the first Star Wars show that has used the volume sparingly. Most of this show was actually shot on location, I believe, in the UK.
It shows.
So that would explain why it looks so good.
Yeah, no, you can definitely tell, and I guess people can look up what that is, but basically shooting on sets versus a screen where things are projected, the sets are projected onto it, kind of thing. Something that with Rogue One, I knew we were going to be getting the kind of on the ground, in the trenches look at this. I didn't expect so quickly us to get into this very gray moral area, sometimes not even gray moral areas for our main character, the hero of our story. And I very quickly realized, this show is trying to say something. Like, it's actually going to be obviously taking a side, against the Empire. Yeah. But the way that it's framing it, we get something that I don't think worked for you, but we get the perfect corporate boss who is just a cog in the Empire, very much aware of how it all works and how to keep it working smoothly. We get someone who's underneath him, who's an up-and-comer, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, wanting to impress his people. Someone that I feel could have a very interesting arc over the course of this show. He's got his right-hand man henchman who is very much this like, let's go fascism warmonger guy who's driving him down this path that he thinks is the right one. But even already we see that he's just now beginning to see the inklings, the true implications of what the Empire is and how it affects people. And I'm interested to see where that character goes. I think it's interesting that we have interesting, and he's not necessarily a good person, but I appreciate that we're getting interesting characters on both sides of this and seeing it from within the system, and our character, who's obviously very much our classic Star Wars character, kind of comes from not much, was introduced to this bigger world, and now is going to get caught up in the fight. So I appreciate us finding the rebellion with Andor at this time period throughout the course of the show. I think that really works well. All the acting and casting choices I think are really solid. The show is really well written. I didn't find myself getting caught up with clunky dialogue, which we definitely have over the course of especially the most recent Star Wars outings. So yeah, I think on most levels the show is really working for me, and I really can't wait to see how it plays week to week, and I'm excited to get caught up in these arcs and kind of play the speculation game throughout the course of this one.
You know, Brian, you and I, we share a lot of the same opinions. I say that often here on the podcast. You know, I'm grateful that for the most part you and I align on a lot of things. And I found that with these first 3 episodes of Andor, I actually really liked a lot of it. You know, Tony Gilroy was the one that came in for Rogue One and kind of re-edited that film, took over directing duties when Disney fired Gareth Edwards, right? So Tony Gilroy is very familiar with the character of Cassian Andor. I think he was the perfect choice to write this entire show. I think his sensibilities are perfect for what Lucasfilm wants to do with this show going forward and what they want it to be. You know, bringing the wars back to Star Wars, really giving us like a down on the ground view of what it was like in the early days of the rebellion, and forming that and fighting back against the Empire. The cinematography was excellent over the course of these 3 episodes. As you mentioned, very well written script. I think all the actors are firing on all cylinders. To be perfectly honest, I really liked these first 3 episodes. However,
the big but.
I said something a little controversial on Twitter, which is these first 3 episodes of Andor are compelling science fiction, but terrible Star Wars. And what I mean by that is George Lucas initially said that Star Wars was meant for children. You know, you have all these fanboys like myself, like you, people who grew up with Star Wars who are now very much adults who, like me, bitch about Star Wars all the time and tend to forget that it's meant initially for children, right? And you would think that watching Andor and seeing how very adult this show is, by no means do I think this is a Star Wars show that children should watch. You know, for the first time, we get like implied sex at one point.
Come on, dude. Come on.
Hear me out.
The kids can't watch implied sex.
Hear me out. It's a whole thing.
This is the classic cutting to the ocean, right? It's like they don't know what's going on.
The character that plays Bix, Adria Arjona, is literally you could see her panties. She's literally pulling up her pants, like in the morning in that scene. Anyway, that's only part.
I appreciated that it was a little more adult, personally.
I like it too. Like that's why my feelings on Andor are very complicated, because, like I said, I really like the show. I like everything that the show's doing, and I think it's excellent sci-fi. And
there's just not enough midichlorians, is what you're saying.
What I'm saying is it's so complicated, because I'm glad that there's not a lot of the Skywalker family in this show. I'm glad there aren't any lightsabers. I'm glad there isn't a lot of iconography that pertains to the Skywalker saga. that's something that Star Wars has needed for a very long time. The Star Wars universe is vast, and if we're only following the Skywalkers, it makes it feel very small, very Dickensian, and that's just not what the universe is.
And you do get recognizable elements. Like there's great shots of a port that just has a bunch of awesome ship designs that you can see. We get warp speed that is really well done. One of my favorite moments. That's a really cool ship design as well. We get some speeders as well. So you're underplaying a little bit because there's definitely some stuff sprinkled in.
There's definitely little sprinkles here and there. And this thing that I'm talking about is going to be remedied very quickly because as we've seen in the trailer, there are TIE fighters.
Luke shows up in episode 4.
At the end of episode 4, Luke Skywalker shows up with Grogu. They're going to be TIE fighters. They're going to be star fighters or star destroyers. We're going to see the Empire. But I think one of the things that I noticed while watching these 3 episodes is that there's very little Empire iconography within these first 3.
No stormtroopers.
No stormtroopers at all. And no Empire ships whatsoever.
This is very much the edges of the Empire, right? I think that's purposeful.
Right. And I completely agree. I think it's purposeful as well. But I don't know, as a Star Wars fan watching this, I found myself getting a little agitated. But
is that because pockets are fomenting?
What?
Pockets are fomenting. We're not gonna.
Once I disassociated these episodes from Star Wars, I really started to enjoy them. Another nitpick, and what. When I say that the show is very adult, I don't want to come across as a prude. Loyal listeners and viewers of the show know that I'm very much not, But
we haven't talked about some of the latest She-Hulk episodes, but I got to imagine you've been in your glory.
There are things that actively took me out of the show. Like the characters said shit for the first time in Star Wars ever.
That took you out of it?
Hear me out though. Hear me out as to why. They used the word bastard for the first time in Star Wars. And the reason these things take me out is because it starts to destroy the verisimilitude of the universe. Star Wars has always utilized in-universe slang and curse words. But when you start using Earth curse words, stuff that's from our world, and you're laughing, and I get that. It's a very silly nitpick. But I'm just speaking as someone who wants the world to feel whole,
Sprinkle I don't want Ferric in there every once in a while.
Dank
for
Ferric,
us.
Scruffy Nerf herder. If you need a curse word, in universe, an in universe curse word.
Yes. What was the new one that they gave us in Boba Fett?
I don't know. Dank Ferric was the one that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau came up with, so they could say fucking shit in The Mandalorian. And I know you're laughing, and I know it sounds really silly, but and I want our characters to be able to express themselves in those situations like we express ourselves in the real world by saying those real world curse words. But it just takes me out of the universe a little bit, or it took me out of the universe hearing those words for the first time in Star Wars. And I know a lot of our listeners right now are probably like, what is wrong with this person? But I feel like I'm not alone in that. I think there are definitely other fans that probably felt the same way. If not, email us at popoholicscast@gmail.com. Tell me that I'm a lunatic for feeling this way. But that's why I said it doesn't feel like good Star Wars, just like great science fiction. Because Tony Gilroy and Tony Haynes were showing some really cool, interesting science fiction elements. I mean, the opening of these first 3 episodes is so Blade Runner-esque and so cool. And Cassian Andor walking in the rain in that area it makes the world feel as though it's lived in and feel like this is a real place. So there's so many great things working to make this solid science fiction. Not using Empire iconography, making it so the antagonists of these first 3 episodes are, like we mentioned, this corporation that's kind of under the umbrella of the Empire, is being paid by them to kind of occupy these areas and make sure they're under control. It gave Tony Gilroy and Tony Haynes the ability to create new uniforms and make an antagonist that was seemingly apart from Star Wars, kind of really only a part of Star Wars through a little bit of dialogue here and there. Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
So, like,
no. It's
really
different
good.
stories that have been told, for sure. Yeah.
It's really good. I'm going to keep watching. But these first 3 episodes didn't feel a lot like they were existing within the Star Wars universe outside of a couple of mentions of things here and there. I love the design of the new cute robot. All Star Wars has to have a new cute robot to sell toys and shit.
I was going to say, there's so many like fundamental elements that are there.
I'm excited to get to see like Saw Gerrera. He's a big portion of the Star Wars mythology. I want to see more creatures. We only really got to see one creature in the entire 3 episodes. So they're just certain things that make Star Wars feel like Star Wars that these 3 episodes just didn't offer or didn't show me. And I'm not, I hope what I'm saying is clear, because I'm not saying that like all Star Wars needs to be totally seeped in fan service and it needs to follow the Skywalker family. Like, I don't want that stuff. I would love to have an adult Star Wars like what Andor is offering, and I think we're going to get there. I think that just these 3 episodes didn't do that for me.
Yeah, it's interesting that you feel it's not in the same universe, because it just feels...
It feels apart to me.
Okay. Yeah, I disagree, but I don't think I can sell you on it.
That's just totally fine. You know,
yeah.
Blake Perry from the Recast cast, and you've got to see this podcast. We had his brother Brad on a couple weeks ago on the show. He and I were having a conversation in the Villains chat, and he too also thought that I was crazy and said that it's as if I had watched a different show. So I think that, you know, from what I've seen online, Andor is really doing it for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Again, I really enjoyed it too. It just wasn't Star Warsy enough for me, and I sound like a lunatic, but that's just how I felt. Brian, you said the pacing of the first 3 episodes really worked for you. Disney released these first 3 episodes because I think had we watched the first episode on its own, or even the first 2 episodes on their own, a lot of people would have abandoned the show. I really don't think until episode 3 that this first 3 story arc really like hits its stride, at least in my opinion. As I mentioned last week when we were talking about Andor coming out this week on Disney Plus, I said that the way this series is structured is every 3 episodes there's going to be a year time jump, and every 3 episodes is directed by somebody different. So the way the show is telling its story functionally is each 3 episodes is a movie. So each director basically shot a film and then they broke it up into 3 episodes. And I think you can really tell that here when watching these first 3 episodes. What that does is it makes me a little concerned for the week-by-week release schedule, because the first 2 episodes in this batch, to me, kind of ended a little abruptly. And I think a lot of people are going to have a hard time watching this show week to week based on how they're chopping these stories up. I think it might get a little frustrating for people.
It's also possible that Tony Gilroy knew that it was going to be released this way, and the other writers did similarly, so maybe they made it a little less dependent. But no, it's something, and like I said early in my review, like I am interested to see, because this one it worked well for me watching it back to back. So if it hadn't worked as well,
we won't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Again.
So we'll definitely see.
My game plan, and our loyal listeners and viewers are more than welcome to do this as well. I think my game plan is going to be to wait every 3 weeks. I'll sit down, I'll watch the 3 episodes back to back like I did this. Honestly, this isn't the first time Star Wars has done something like this. When Clone Wars was airing on Cartoon Network, the way those episodes were broken up typically were 3 episode story arcs. So, and same thing, when I was watching Clone Wars as it was airing, I always felt a little frustrated and let down for like the first 2 weeks because we didn't get the conclusion until 3 weeks later. You know, so it wasn't until binging the Clone Wars later in life that I really appreciated the whole story without that kind of week-to-week frustration.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with the Book of Boba Fett. You know, the first 4 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, you binged in their entirety while I watched them week to week.
Yeah.
And those first 4 weeks, I kept telling you, like, I think the pacing is kind of really bad in this show. But then when we went to do our review, I binged those first 4 episodes back to back, and I was like, I really actually like this first segment of the Book of Boba Fett. It flows very well. So I think some fans are going to run into a similar issue where we're not going to have the entire story. We're going to have to wait for these 3-week batches, and I think you're going to hear fans on Twitter get kind of frustrated. When are they not frustrated with Star Wars, though?
True.
Week to week, because there's something lacking when it comes to the pacing of this particular show. I'm completely speculating right now. There's no way for me to tell because we have yet to get that 4th episode. And next week will be the deciding factor, I think.
As you've said, if there's a lull, you get a new director in a few episodes. So it's like this, it could be completely, I doubt it'll be completely tonally shifting, but different director every 3 episodes. So it's going to be different regardless.
I think that's really interesting too. Like every 3 weeks, we're going to get like a mini Star Wars movie. And I'm excited at that prospect. I'm interested to see how the fans' opinion kind of unfolds over the next couple weeks. But bottom line, I really enjoyed Andor despite my really long-winded rant that might say otherwise. I'm excited to see more Star Wars iconography without the fan service that you would get from like the Rise of Skywalker. You know, like just show me a TIE fighter for a second. You know? And I know that doesn't make good storytelling, but because Andor is such high quality, to make it feel as though it is part of this greater whole, I would like to see some of those things.
If they show TIE fighter, you have to rate it X.
Oh, Brian.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, I've ranted long enough.
It's an
I
H.
apologize to Brian and to all of our loyal listeners and viewers. Brian, we're going to jump into spoilers here. Roll the bumper.
Let's do it.
Brian, what are some of the standout moments from these first 3 episodes for you?
Well, the first one, that was kind of like the punch me in the gut, like, whoa, was getting harassed by the pseudo off-duty, maybe on-duty security guard / cops, and Andor, you know, manslaughtering a guy, basically, accidentally killing someone, and then straight up murdering a dude in cold blood to cover it up. I was just kind of blown away with how quickly our main character got into something like that. And obviously it sets up him needing a reason to get off planet and builds to where the rest of the story goes. So it works from a plot perspective, but also, just from like a moral perspective. Yeah, go ahead. A
really interesting beat, considering the first time we see Andor in Rogue One, he murders his informant because he has a hurt leg. Like, without question, he just kills a man. So, like, this is probably the first time he's had to do something like this, make a split-second decision and kill someone. Yeah. And we kind of, I'm very interested to see how that character arc builds in, like, a not-so-positive way, I guess, to, like, him just, like, being very comfortable doing it for the rebellion.
Yeah. So the way that all played out, like, I just thought it was really effective. Him accidentally doing it, the way the 2 cops who we clearly are like, they're terrible people. The ones accidentally killed were immediately like, oh shit, like, I don't know if they deserve to die. And the other one starts pleading for his life. And it's just like, my God, like, in terms of kids not watching things, this is kind of the moment that I think is the darkest of the entire show. Absolutely. Where you really have like the depths of humanity at play. But, you know, we see where things go, and obviously what would have happened to him if he stayed. He probably would have been in jail forever, maybe justifiably. But to start us there with our main character, who we're supposed to like and want to follow, it was a really bold choice, I think, to start us off there. And maybe this is part of what you're saying about people, if it had gone week to week, sitting with something like that. I don't know. That's a heavy thing to sit with for a character, because it was episode 1 or 2 where that happened.
That was at the very beginning of episode 1. It was
the first episode. So yeah, it's like it just felt really bold to me. And like I said, getting the perspective from the outer reaches of the Empire through the corporation as well. And some of my favorite moments, we'll touch on that too. But it just, it felt like, oh, we're going somewhere that Star Wars hasn't really dived deep into before. And it got me just super excited.
I was watching that and I was thinking, Cassian Andor is a better Han Solo than Han Solo.
Wow, this is blasphemous now.
This is the cynical side. I'm so sorry. With God, I promise I love this franchise. Since Disney has acquired Star Wars, they have created clone characters of legacy Star Wars characters. So, Din Djarin is a clone of Boba Fett. They prefer Din Djarin to Boba Fett because it is a Disney creation. Cassian Andor is a clone of Han Solo. They prefer Cassian Andor to Han Solo because George Lucas created Han Solo and Disney created Cassian Andor. So if you go back and look at a lot of the stuff that Disney has made with the Star Wars franchise since acquiring it, you're going to see a lot of these parallels and them trying to like recreate popular things from the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy just under the Disney umbrella because they feel more comfortable using their own creations than something that George made.
I don't feel he's as, like, the smarminess I don't get from him nearly to the same degree as Han Solo, just in terms of the quippiness and kind of just being that, lovable asshole kind of thing. I don't see it exactly. I see kind of, oh gosh, I'm going to blank on Oscar Isaac's character, but there's definitely some
Poe Dameron.
I think there's definitely some of him. That's kind of like a Luke Han combo, maybe.
Right.
But no, I definitely, your point is definitely valid about them recreating all of these characters.
Anyway, that being said, Cassian Andor is a better Han Solo than Han Solo is because he just kills. We see Cassian Andor kill right off the bat. We've already seen him in cold blood murder 2 people. I'm sure we'll see him murder countless others on this journey as the series continues. So he's not afraid to shoot first. Let's just say that.
Definitely not at this point. All right. Did you have any standout moments?
Totally.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. What was one of yours?
I love the moment after Cassian has killed these 2 officers and he goes to visit his friend in like the construction yard and he's talking to him about his alibi. Like they're crafting this story and then like without missing a beat, his friend just jumps in and like builds on the story. And it's a perfect representation of this relationship between the 2 of them. And
unquestioned loyalty.
Those that Cassian Andor keeps close are extremely close. And then just prior to that, you have him interacting with the one guy that like approaches him and asks him for money. And then you have the alien that's like trying to be the muscle, but like not quite getting there. Yeah. You know, that's also a really fun interaction. But you can see that Cassian has like this very close knit circle of allies. And I think Tony Gilroy does an excellent job illustrating that just from this quick dialogue scene between these 2 characters. So I really, really dug that moment. And then, you know, later on in this 3-episode arc, we see that same friend has sabotaged one of the corporation's ships by like attaching the debris to the back of it. Also, this guy, I'm sorry I can't remember his name, but this guy doesn't say it very much over the course of the 3 episodes. It's mostly just face acting, and I think he does a great job.
Yeah, when he sabotages that one ship, we get the guy, the one character who you think could be someone we're going to follow for a while, but he's literally just there to see him take off the ship and crash, and it's just like incredible that we sit with that guy for like 15 seconds like, oh, I wonder what this guy's backstory is. Yeah. Smash into the wall. Just perfect.
It's great. What else stood out to you in these first 3 episodes?
I kind of made a reference to it earlier, but I don't know his name, but like the Scottish character who's like the right-hand man of our corporate underling guy.
Yeah, Cyril Karn's like sidekick, the one who's like kind of pushing him into the mission.
Yes.
I apologize, loyal listeners. There's so many new characters.
Yes.
In these 3 episodes that we just can't possibly remember all of them. But I know who you're referring to, Brian.
So he gives a speech to him about pockets of dissent fomenting, and he's just riling this guy up to be bloodthirsty and do whatever needs to be done. And it's just like the worst type of hype man who absolutely wants, is bloodthirsty, wants the Empire to thrive at its most cruel.
Yeah, all about what the Empire's doing currently.
Completely without question.
Yeah.
And that was the second moment, which I guess maybe that was episode 2, because I watched them all back to back. I can't remember specifically. But it was like, okay, so we get Andor killing these people. We get this guy showing this side of it, and it's like, wow, okay. We're going to have complex feelings throughout the course of this show. We're going to have to work to follow these characters. And I don't know if this is part of what you're pushing back against about the non-clear delineations of like, okay, some of our bad characters may end up doing good things or making choices that are good, and vice versa, obviously. But that just makes them more like real people to me, and therefore more relatable to our world, right? And so maybe this is kind of part of what you're getting hung up on, which I understand.
No, I'm
okay,
not.
Okay,
that doesn't bother me at all. Like the world is a shade of gray, dude.
Sure.
Like I appreciate. To be clear, I don't know if I made this point clear when in our non-spoiler section. I don't mind the adult stuff. It's just not very Star Warsy to me. I think it's still fantastic, and I think I absolutely love the script. It's just some of those more adult elements make it feel less Star Wars, but I'm not mad at... See how the feelings are complex. I'm not mad about it. I like the show for what it is.
Yeah.
It's just, there comes a point in time where my brain goes, this is great storytelling. Is it Star Wars in name alone for marketing purposes? Like, we lack such little original IP these days, and original science fiction stories that, like, this is fucking great.
But we know the Empire had to grow and develop and go to these smaller planets and do this.
We do.
That's what confuses me about it. It's like it fits well within the context of where we get introduced to them in New Hope. And I'm hopeful that it gets there for you. I'm hopeful it gets there for you, because I think it will.
I think it will too. Based on what we see in the trailer, I would assume that next week, all these gripes are going to be completely dismissed.
Now that we're kind of in the Rebel Alliance. Okay, something like the shot of the speeders overhead over the multicolored fields.
So cool.
Incredible. It's like, that's so cool. Amazing.
As Diego Luna and Stellan Skarsgård are riding over this varied terrain, you can see like dust and water variation as the train's shifting underneath them. Awesome shot. Such a cool shot.
Beautiful stuff.
Totally agree.
We get a really great scene where Andor maybe sees his reflection for the first time when he goes onto the ship and steals the piece of tech that he ends up seeing. And that felt like the classic kind of Joseph Campbell stepping into a new world moment, right? We get the second one where we meet Skarsgård's character and he's actually getting pulled into the fight proper. But this is the first moment where he's outside of the group he's come from, seeing the potential for this huge other world that's out there. And leading into what I think is definitely one of my favorite final moments, which may have been yours as well, the montage at the end where we're cutting back and forth between time periods. And they play around with us a little bit in times like where you'll think a shot is in a certain time period, but it's revealed that it's not, which I had a lot of fun with. And it's stuff that's kind of like experimental in a way that Star Wars doesn't tend to be. Yeah. So it building up there, I was like, wow, if all of the arcs can kind of coalesce in this way and really come together in this anthology style series, this is going to be a great show.
Yeah, I really dug how the two parallel timelines kind of end with a similar moment. You know, we have Marva coming and taking Casa from Kenari. Casa is leaving this homeworld that he's known for years. And then at the same time, we have Cassian, the adult Casa, having to leave, again, this homeworld that he's known for many, many years. So it just feels like child Casa and adult Cassian are on very similar journeys, even though they're the same person. But I really do, like you, enjoyed the juxtaposition of those two timelines over these first 3 episodes. I think they're very well handled. I mean, Tony Gilroy's extremely talented. I wouldn't expect anything less, even when he's in the Star Wars sandbox,
Yeah, no, definitely agree. I brought it up before. The last thing I kind of want to shout out is just the warp speed and the ship design of the ship that we see in warp speed. Modern warp just looks so awesome now, and they use it very sparingly. We only see it a couple of times very quickly, but when it happens, it's like, wow, very effective. Just always appreciate good. I don't know if it's actually models or something, but the ship looks real, and it's just good Star Wars stuff for me.
Agreed. I'm glad. I didn't have a problem with that.
No, I know. I wasn't trying to imply that.
No. I'm glad that, and I agree with you. It looks great. It's good Star Wars. I can't wait for a little more Star Wars.
And a little more Skarsgård coming soon. Oh
gosh, yeah. That's kind of the last sequence that I want to shout out before we wrap things up here. Cassian's interaction with Stellan Skarsgård's character, who new character, Luthen Rael, I believe is his name, Luthen Rael. They have such a great dynamic. I love how careful they're being of one another while trying to suss out information. The entire sequence in the warehouse, once they're discovered by the corporation, with all the chains breaking and these giant pieces of machinery falling around, it all looks really good. It's well choreographed action, and then like you said, leading up to that speeder chase over that varied terrain. That's why I said I think episode 3 is the strongest of this set, because it ties the first 2 together.
Sure.
And again, I think it was for the best that Lucasfilm and Disney decided to release these 3 in a batch instead of just starting week to week from the very beginning, because they are at their strongest as a whole.
I'm going to be very surprised if you're able to hold off and wait for these 3 episodes.
I'm going to use you a little bit here, Brian. I think I'm going to let you watch this episode, and then you tell me whether or not you think that it is paced well enough to be a standalone, or if I should watch and wait and watch the 3 together. So I don't know if your game plan was to watch it week to week. I know you.
I'm going to probably try to
with every show.
Yeah, it depends.
But if you do end up watching this episode, I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts before I watch it.
Oh my God, there was at least a half second of a stormtrooper helmet in there. I swear to God, it was insane.
Show made. I want to be clear.
I know that's
this is. I keep saying I want to be clear. I'm like a fucking broken record here. What I would love, and I think this is a perfect segue into what our hopes are for the rest of the what is it, 9 episodes of this first season. I would love for Darth Vader never to show up. I would love for it to solely be focused on stormtroopers.
Oh.
Yeah. I want to see a Force Ghost, which would be weird considering Darth Vader's still Darth Vader. I would love for the antagonists of this show to be the Empire without seeing Palpatine, without seeing Darth Vader. I would like it for them to just be Imperial officers and stormtroopers, the people that really make up the bulk of what the Empire does and the cruelty that it presents to the universe. It's not Darth Vader and Palpatine running around the universe by themselves performing cruel acts. It's mostly soldiers who are performing all these heinous deeds across the galaxy. So I hope we never see Darth Vader or Palpatine over the course of this entire series. I think that would be way more interesting. What about you, Brian? Do you have, I know before we started recording, you said you don't know exactly what your hopes are, but do you have any hopes or wishes for the rest of the show?
Yeah, I would definitely prefer not to have them either, Palpatine or Vader. I think what I'm looking for this show and what it seems to be starting to give us is the complications of war and what it means to fight against systems that are so massive as to seem insurmountable, but because of that, the implicit mindset that those systems have and how that can become their downfall and some of their arrogance can be used against them.
I don't know if you want to shout out the scene. I'll let you.
No, go for it.
Cassian, what you're mentioning, Cassian's speech is so good. Where
So
he's
good.
Just talking about how the arrogance of the Empire, and like they would never even consider that anyone like him would be able to infiltrate in like a jumpsuit with some dirty hands and tools. I think he says, like, I think what he is saying is a perfect representation of what you just said, which is the absolute hubris of this giant system that is just beating down on everyone. That speech alone got me excited for where the show is going in the future. So I wholeheartedly agree with what you just said.
That's it. If they keep up with that, I'm going to be here for it. Yeah.
This is essentially like almost like a crime drama in the Star Wars universe. So, or like a revolution drama. I don't know what you classify it as, but these first 3 episodes, at least in the present timeline, felt very street level, crime oriented, and I'm here for it. Just give me a little, Star Wars Bay. Just sprinkle a little more Star Wars spices in it for me. We saw a Bantha plushie like that. That didn't do anything for me. I was like, oh, it is in the Star Wars universe. Okay, but just show me some Star Wars ships. Anyway, I'm done ranting about all that bullshit. I'm sorry. Loyal listeners and viewers.
Hey, that's what they come here for. Come on. It's all our bullshit.
For my long-winded, aggressive, cynical Star Wars rants. That's what everyone comes here for. I'm a terrible person. Brian, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up our discussion about Andor?
I think that's it. I'm excited to keep watching it, and we'll keep you guys in the loop as to if I watch it week to week, and if Chris, if he waits, and we'll see what we recommend.
Next week, when we come back, we'll give a little update. We'll see.
And Chris is going to talk about being carried by She-Hulk and how his life forever changed.
It really has changed, Brian, for the better. My final thoughts, basically everything I just mentioned. I'm interested to see how the release schedule for this show is going to impact the discourse in regards to the quality of the show.
Oh, the discourse. Yikes. Discourse.
I hope that my predictions don't come to fruition. That's all I have to say. But I'm really excited to see where the show goes. I think this could very well end up being one of the best Star Wars shows, if not the best Star Wars show that Disney has made. So, fingers crossed.
Got potential, right? For sure.
Loyal listeners and viewers, thank you so much for hanging out with Brian and I talking about Andor. You can find Pop-O-Holics on Twitter at Pop-O-Holics. You can find us on Instagram at Pop-O-Holicscast. You can email us at popaholicscast@gmail.com. Tell us what you thought about Andor. We are very interested in hearing what you thought of these first 3 episodes. Did it work for you? Did it not? Did you think the first 2 episodes were slow and the third one was the best one out of the batch? We want to know. Reach out to us there. Brian, where can our loyal listeners and viewers find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at True Pop-O-Holic.
And you can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, talking about all things nerdy, comic books, movies, television, video games, collectibles. If it's nerdy, I'm talking about it. And then you can also find my writing over on carefulforspoilers.com. I just released a ranking of the Star Wars shows from worst to best. Go over there and tell me how wrong I am.
You can see which ones he thinks are the baddest of the batch.
We'll talk about something after we wrap about that, Brian. Anyway, thank you again for joining us here for this episode. We're going to wrap it up like we do every week with Christian's TikTok of the week.
I'm Midwest Man.
Is everyone okay?
No thanks to you.
No thanks to me? Those weapons were out there and I tried to tell you about it, but you didn't listen. None of this would have happened if you would just listen to me. If you even cared, you'd actually be here.
I did listen, kid.
What
do you think called the FBI, huh? Do you know that I was the only one who believed in you? Everyone else said I was crazy to recruit a 14-year-old kid.
I'm 15.
No, this is where you zip it, all right? The adult is talking. What if somebody had died tonight? Different story.